The fork froze halfway to my mouth when my father said those words. You'll transfer the funds by Monday. Not a request. Not a question. A command. I looked around the table at faces I'd known my whole life, searching for someone who'd tell me this was some kind of sick joke. But Mom's eyes dropped to her plate. My sister Leona suddenly found her wine glass fascinating. And Caleb, my little brother Caleb, just stared at me with this mix of desperation and entitlement that made my stomach turn. They were serious. Dead serious. $75,000. My money. Money I'd bled for. Money I'd earned working doubles and triples while they took family vacations. Money I'd saved by living in a shoebox apartment when I could have gotten something nicer. And they wanted me to hand it over like I was some ATM machine with legs. Let me get this straight, I said, setting my fork down carefully because my hands were starting to shake. Caleb gambled away $75,000, and somehow that's my problem to fix. Mom reached across the table like she was going to touch my hand, but I pulled back. Darian, honey, he's in real danger. These aren't good people. They've threatened him. Then call the police. We can't, Dad said, his voice hard. That would only make things worse. You have the savings. You're stable. Your brother needs help. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The candles flickered between us, casting shadows that made everyone look like strangers. This wasn't the family dinner I'd driven 90 minutes for. This wasn't the monthly tradition where we laughed and caught up and pretended we all still liked each other. This was an ambush. How did you even know about my savings? I asked quietly. Silence. The kind that answers questions without words. Caleb cleared his throat. I might have mentioned it. You might have mentioned it. I repeated slowly. You told them exactly how much I have in my accounts, didn't you? You've been planning this. Don't be dramatic. Leona finally spoke up, but her voice was weak. Nobody planned anything. We're just trying to help Caleb before. Before what? Before he faces consequences for once in his miserable life. Mom gasped like I'd slapped her. Darian Cole, that is your brother. Yeah. And I'm your son. But apparently that only matters when you need something from me. Dad's jaw tightened. I knew that look. The one that meant the conversation was over whether I liked it or not. This isn't up for debate. We've already discussed it as a family, without me. And we've decided this is what's best. You'll make the transfer by Monday or there will be consequences. The room went cold. Colder than the November air outside. Colder than anything I'd ever felt from these people. Consequences, I said. What kind of consequences? He leaned back in his chair, eyes hard as stone. Your inheritance. The house your grandfather left. The trust fund. The land. All of it. If you're not willing to help this family when it matters most, then maybe you don't deserve to be part of what we've built. The words hit me like a physical blow. Not because I cared about the money. I'd made my own way without their help for 10 years. But because of what those words actually meant. They were willing to cut me out. Disown me. Erase me from the family tree like I never existed. All because I wouldn't enable my brother's addiction. Mom's voice came out soft, almost apologetic. We don't want it to come to that, sweetheart. We just need you to understand how serious this is. Caleb made mistakes, yes, but we can't just abandon him. But you can abandon me. Nobody answered that. Caleb shifted in his seat, and for a second I thought I saw guilt flash across his face. But then he spoke, and any sympathy I had evaporated. Look, I'll pay you back. I swear. I just need time to get things sorted out, and then… You won't. I cut him off. You won't pay me back because you never have before. Remember sophomore year when you borrowed $3,000 for a business idea? Remember Mom's credit card you maxed out? Remember the loan you took in Dad's name that he's still paying off? His face went red. That was different. No, it wasn't. The only thing that's different is the amount. Dad stood up then, his chair scraping loud against the hardwood. Enough. We're not here to relitigate the past. We're here to solve a present problem, and you're going to help whether you like it or not. And if I don't, his eyes met mine with a coldness I'd never seen directed at me before. Only at people outside the family. Strangers. Enemies. Then you're no longer part of this family's legacy. The words hung in the air like smoke. Like poison. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Mom's hand covered her mouth. Leona stared at her empty plate. Caleb looked almost triumphant, like he'd finally won something. And me? I just sat there, watching my family eat dessert like they hadn't just told me I was disposable. Would you stay silent at that table? Or would you walk out into the night and never look back? I didn't remember leaving the house. One minute I was sitting at that table, the next I was in my car with the engine running and my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles had gone white. The cold November air bit through my jacket, but I couldn't feel it. All I could feel was the weight of what just happened pressing down on my chest like a concrete slab. They'd chosen him. After everything. After I'd helped them keep the house when Dad lost his job. After I'd paid for Mom's surgery out of pocket because their insurance wouldn't cover it. After I'd given up my own dreams to make sure Leona could finish college without debt. I'd bled for this family. And they'd just told me I was worthless unless I bled some more. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. I ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. I grabbed it, ready to throw it out the window when I saw the name on the screen.
Caleb.
My finger hovered over the decline button. Every rational part of my brain screamed to ignore it, to drive away and never look back. But that stupid, stubborn part of me that still believed in family, that still remembered teaching him to ride a bike and helping him with homework and defending him from bullies in middle school, that part made me answer. What? His voice came through broken, shaking. Darian, please. I know you're mad, but you have to understand. Understand what? That you're a liar? That you manipulated Mom and Dad into blackmailing me? That you've been using this family like your personal ATM for years? It's not like that. He was crying now. Actually crying. These people, they're not playing around. They know where I live. They know where I work. They've already sent guys to my apartment twice. Last time they broke my window and left a note that said I had until Friday or what? Silence. Long enough that I thought he'd hung up. Then, barely a whisper. They'll kill me if I don't pay. My heart stuttered. Not because I believed him. Caleb had been lying since he could talk, but because a tiny part of me wondered if maybe just this once he was telling the truth. Who are these people? I can't tell you that. Why not? Because if I do, they'll know I talked, and then it won't matter if I pay or not. Classic Caleb. Always another layer. Always another excuse. Always another reason why the rules didn't apply to him. I should have hung up. Should have blocked his number and driven straight home and forgotten this whole nightmare dinner ever happened. Instead, I heard myself say, send me their names. Everything you have. If these people are really threatening you, we go to the police.
No.
No police. That'll make it worse. They have connections, Darian. Cops on payroll. If we involve them, I'm dead. Then what do you want from me? Just the money.
Please.
I know it's a lot, and I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you. I'm your brother. Doesn't that mean anything anymore? The question hit different than he meant it to. Because, yeah, he was my brother. But what did that mean when he'd spent the last decade treating me like a resource instead of a person? I'll think about it, I finally said. Think fast. Fridays in 4 days. Then he hung up. I sat there in the driveway of my parents' house, staring at my phone, watching my breath fog up the windshield. 4 days. $75,000. A lifetime of savings gone in one transfer. My finger moved almost on its own, pulling up my banking app. The balance stared back at me. $82,417. Every cent accounted for. Every sacrifice visible in those numbers. I could do it.
Technically.
I could save him. But what would I be saving? A gambling addict who'd never faced real consequences? A man who'd forge his own father's signature for a quick score? A brother who saw my success as his emergency fund? My thumb hovered over the transfer button. Have you ever been one click away from ruining your life to save someone else's? I didn't sleep that night.
Couldn't.
Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Caleb's face from when we were kids. 7 years old, gap-toothed smile, holding up a drawing he'd made of our family. He'd drawn me bigger than everyone else because, he said, I was his hero. When did I stop being his hero and become his bank? By 3 in the morning, I'd convinced myself to send the money. By 4, I talked myself out of it. By 5, I was sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop open, cursor blinking in the transfer amount field. 75,000. 3 keystrokes and a confirmation click. That's all it would take. I thought about what Mom said, what Dad threatened, what Caleb begged for. Then I thought about something else. Something that had been nagging at me since dinner. A memory from 2 Thanksgivings ago when Caleb had shown up with a black eye and a story about getting mugged. Dad had given him $5,000 right there at the table. No questions. No hesitation. But later that night, I'd heard Leona on the phone with someone, her voice tight with anger. I don't care what excuse he gave Dad. I saw him at the casino. He lost a fight over a poker game, not a mugging. Leona had known, and she'd said nothing. How many times had this happened? How many lies had we all swallowed because it was easier than admitting Caleb had a problem none of us knew how to fix? My phone lit up. 6:15 a.m. A text from Renee, my lawyer friend from college. We'd stayed close over the years, mostly because she was one of the few people who never asked me for anything. The text was short. Heard you were up. Coffee. I didn't question how she knew. Renee had always been weirdly intuitive like that. 20 minutes later, we were sitting in a corner booth at an all-night diner, and I was telling her everything. She listened without interrupting.
Didn't touch her coffee.
Just listened with that laser focus she used in courtrooms. When I finished, she pulled out her phone. What's Caleb's full name? Caleb James Cole. Why? Her fingers flew across the screen. 30 seconds of silence. Then her face changed. Went hard. Don't send a cent. What? She turned her phone toward me. It was a court filing. Public record. And there, in black and white, was my brother's name attached to a fraud lawsuit. This is from 8 months ago, Renee said. Small business owner sued him for writing bad checks under a fake company name. Case was settled out of court, probably because your parents paid it off. My stomach dropped. There's more, isn't there? It wasn't a question. She pulled up another document. Then another. 2 lawsuits. Both fraud-related. This one's worse. He forged a signature on a loan application. The signature was your father's. The diner suddenly felt too small. Too hot. I couldn't breathe right. Dad knows. Based on the settlement?
Yeah.
He knows. So they'd known. All of them. They'd known Caleb wasn't just a gambler with bad luck. He was a criminal. A con artist. And they'd covered for him. And now they expected me to do the same. There's something else, Renee said quietly. These gambling debts he claims he has? I'd bet my law degree they're either exaggerated or completely fabricated. This feels like a setup. A setup for what? To bleed you dry. Think about it. He's done this before, just in smaller amounts. Now he's going big. And your parents are helping him because if you refuse, they can paint you as the bad guy who abandoned family. My hands started shaking. Not from fear. From rage. Pure, white-hot rage. What do I do? Renee slid the phone back and looked me dead in the eye. You go back there. You show them these documents. And you watch your parents explain why they've been protecting a fraud while threatening to disown you. I almost transferred the money out of pity that morning. Almost let guilt win.
But now?
Now I was going to war. Would you confront your family with evidence they've been lying to you for years, knowing it might destroy everything? The drive back to my parents' house felt longer than it should have. Every mile gave me time to imagine how this was going to go. The denials. The excuses. The way Mom would cry and Dad would get defensive, and Leona would try to play peacemaker. But I had evidence now. Cold, hard legal evidence. They couldn't spin their way out of court documents. I'd printed everything at Renee's office. The lawsuits. The fraud charges. The forged loan with Dad's signature that he'd apparently covered up. 37 pages of truth that my family had buried under lies and manipulation.
My phone rang twice on the drive.
Caleb both times. I didn't answer. Whatever sob story he had prepared could wait. It was just past 8 when I pulled into the driveway. Dad's truck was there. Mom's sedan. Even Leona's car, which meant she'd stayed the night.
Good.
I wanted everyone there for this. I grabbed the folder from the passenger seat, took one deep breath, and walked up to the door. Didn't knock. Just walked in like I'd done 1,000 times before. They were in the kitchen. Mom at the stove making pancakes, like yesterday hadn't happened. Dad reading the newspaper. Leona scrolling on her phone. All very normal. All very fake. Mom jumped when she saw me. Darian. I didn't think you'd. We need to talk. Dad didn't look up from his paper. If you're here to apologize. I'm not. I dropped the folder on the table with a thud that made Leona flinch. But maybe you should be. Now he looked up. Eyes narrowed. Excuse me? Open it. Darian, honey, what is this? Mom's voice had that nervous edge to it. The one she got when she knew something bad was coming. Open.
It.
Dad reached for the folder slowly, like it might bite him. Pulled out the first few pages. His face went pale. Actually pale. I'd never seen that happen before. Where did you get these? Public record. Turns out when your son commits fraud, it leaves a paper trail. Mom moved closer, reading over his shoulder. Her hand went to her mouth. Oh my God. Leona stood up. What is it? I turned to her. Your little brother's been busy. 2 fraud lawsuits. Bad checks. Forged signatures. Including Dad's. That's not. Leona started, but her voice died when she saw the documents. The kitchen went silent except for the sound of pages turning. Dad was reading every single one, his jaw getting tighter with each new revelation. Mom had tears running down her face, but she wasn't making a sound. You knew, I said quietly. Both of you. You knew he'd done this before, and you covered for him. How much did that settlement cost you? Dad's hands were shaking. That's none of your business. It became my business when you tried to blackmail me into paying his debts. When you threatened to cut me out of the family for refusing to enable a criminal. Don't call him that. That's what he is, Dad. It's right there in black and white. He forged your name. Your name. And you paid it off and pretended it never happened. Mom finally spoke, voice breaking. We were trying to protect him. From what? Consequences? Responsibility? Reality? From going to jail, she screamed. The words echoed in the small kitchen.
He would have gone to jail, Darian.
Our son. In prison. We couldn't let that happen. So, you let him keep doing it instead. Footsteps behind me. I turned to find Caleb standing in the doorway, still in yesterday's clothes. He looked at the papers spread across the table, and something in his expression changed. Went dark. You had no right. I laughed. Actually laughed. I had no right. You forged Dad's signature, and I'm the one crossing lines. He took a step toward me. You had no right to dig into my life. To bring this up. To ruin. Ruin what? Your con? Your little setup where everyone feels sorry for you while you drain them dry. Another step. Shut up. Or what? You'll forge my signature next? Take out loans in my name? How far were you planning to go? Shut up. Boys, please. Mom tried to get between us, but Caleb shoved past her. You think you're so much better than me, he snarled, getting in my face. Mr. Perfect. Mr. Successful. You've always looked down on me. I looked up to you. I defended you. I believed in you even when everyone else gave up. And this is what you were doing behind our backs. His hand shot out and grabbed my collar. You shouldn't have come here. Dad finally moved. Caleb, let him go. But Caleb wasn't listening. His eyes had that wild look I'd seen once before, years ago, when he'd gotten caught stealing from Mom's purse and had blamed it on the housekeeper. You ruined everything, he whispered, and then he lunged at me, screaming, You ruined me? Have you ever watched someone you loved completely lose control right in front of you? The punch caught me off guard. Not because it hurt. Caleb had always hit like a kid throwing a tantrum, but because he actually did it. Actually swung at me in Mom's kitchen while everyone watched. I stumbled back against the counter, more shocked than injured. Dad was yelling. Mom was screaming. Leona had her phone out like she might call the cops. Caleb came at me again, wild and sloppy, and this time I was ready. I caught his arm, twisted, and shoved him backward. He crashed into the kitchen table, sending the documents flying everywhere. That's enough. Dad's voice cracked through the chaos like a whip. He grabbed Caleb by the shoulders and physically hauled him back. What the hell is wrong with you? Caleb was panting, eyes unfocused, chest heaving. He's ruining everything. Don't you see? He's trying to destroy me. You did that yourself, I said, my voice deadly calm despite my racing heart. I just showed them the receipts. Mom was sobbing now, full-on sobbing, leaning against the counter like her legs might give out. Leona moved to comfort her, shooting me a look I couldn't quite read.
Anger?
Guilt? Relief? Dad still had Caleb by the shoulders. Get your things. You're leaving.
What?
You heard me. Get your things and get out of this house. Dad, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Dad's voice was cold. Colder than I'd ever heard it. You lied to us. You used us. You forged my name and then had the audacity to ask your brother to bail you out of the mess you created. But those people, they're going to. There are no people. I cut him off. Are there, Caleb?
My lawyer checked.
Those dangerous criminals you're so afraid of?
They don't exist.
You made them up. The room went silent. Even Mom stopped crying. Caleb's face cycled through expressions. Denial, panic, and finally, resignation.
Fine.
You want the truth? The debt's real, but it's not 75,000. It's 30. And yeah, they're not exactly mobsters. Just guys from the casino who want their money. 30,000, Dad repeated slowly. So, you tried to squeeze 45 extra out of your brother? Caleb didn't answer.
Didn't need to.
Get out,
Dad said again.
Pack a bag. You have 20 minutes. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Figure it out. That's what adults do when they make bad choices. They figure it out. Caleb looked at Mom, desperate. Mom, please. But she just shook her head, tears still streaming. I can't watch you destroy yourself anymore. I can't watch you destroy this family. For a moment, I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Then I remembered the forged signatures. The lies. The way he tried to manipulate everyone into making me the villain. He stormed past me, shoulder-checking me on the way out. I hope you're happy. You just destroyed your own family. No, I called after him. I just stopped enabling yours. His bedroom door slammed so hard the dishes rattled. The kitchen felt different without him in it. Smaller somehow. Quieter. Like we could finally breathe. Dad sank into a chair, suddenly looking 10 years older. His hands were still trembling as he picked up one of the scattered documents. I should have stopped this years ago. Yeah, I said. You should have. He looked up at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw my father cry. Not the silent tears he'd shed at his mother's funeral. Real crying. Broken crying. I failed you. I chose him over you. Over and over, and I failed you. I wanted to argue. Wanted to say it wasn't that simple. But it was. He had chosen Caleb. Every single time. Leona cleared her throat. I knew about some of it. Not all, but enough. I should have said something. Why didn't you? She looked down. Because it was easier not to. Because every time I tried to tell them the truth, they'd make excuses or change the subject or act like I was being dramatic. After a while, I just stopped trying. Mom wiped her eyes with a dish towel. We've been lying to ourselves for so long. We forgot what the truth looked like. Footsteps on the stairs. Caleb appeared with a duffel bag, face hard and closed off. He didn't say goodbye. Didn't look at anyone. Just walked straight to the door. He paused with his hand on the doorknob. You'll regret this. All of you. Then he was gone. The door closing behind him sounded like the end of something. Maybe the end of the family we used to be. Or maybe just the end of the lies we've been telling ourselves. Dad stood up slowly, walked over to me. For a second, I thought he might hug me, but instead, he just extended his hand. Thank you. I stared at it. For what? For being strong enough to do what I should have done years ago. For loving us enough to tell us the truth, even when it hurt. I took his hand, shook it. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. My phone buzzed. A text from Leona, even though she was standing right there. Dad kicked him out. You were right. I showed her the screen.
Yeah.
I know. Would you feel like a hero or a villain after destroying your family to save it? The silence after Caleb left felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. Mom kept cleaning the same spot on the counter over and over, like if she scrubbed hard enough, she could erase what just happened. Dad sat at the table staring at the scattered documents like they were written in a language he'd just learned to read. Leona was the first to speak. I should go check on him. Don't, I said. He's still our brother. He's a grown man who made his choices. Let him figure this one out. She looked at me like I'd suggested drowning puppies. When did you become so cold? I'm not cold. I'm done. There's a difference. Mom finally stopped scrubbing. Maybe Leona's right. We can't just abandon him completely. And there it was. The same pattern. The same excuses. The same inability to let Caleb face real consequences. You know what? I grabbed my jacket off the chair. I'm out. Call me when you're ready to stop protecting him and start helping him. Dad's voice stopped me at the door. Wait. I turned. He was standing now, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. You're right, he said quietly. About all of it. We've been enabling him. Making excuses. Choosing the easy lie over the hard truth. He took a shaky breath. I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know where to start. You start by letting him hit rock bottom, I said. You start by saying no. You start by caring more about his recovery than his comfort. Mom's voice cracked. What if he doesn't survive rock bottom? What if he doesn't survive us constantly catching him before he falls? The question hung in the air like smoke. Nobody had an answer. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Darian Cole? A woman's voice. Professional.
Clipped.
Yeah, who's this? Detective Sarah Brennan, Fraud Division. I'm calling about your brother, Caleb James Cole. We'd like to ask you some questions. My blood went cold. Questions about what? There's been another incident. A landlord reported him for writing bad checks and identity theft. Used someone else's information on a rental application. We're building a case, and we understand you might have information that could help. I looked at my parents. At Leona. At the mess we'd all helped create by looking the other way for so long. Yeah, I said. I have information. Mom's face went white. Darian, no. But I was already walking outside, already giving the detective Renee's contact information, already doing what someone should have done years ago. When I hung up, I found Leona standing on the porch. You're really going to let them arrest him? I'm going to let him face consequences. Finally. For once in his miserable life. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, Dad kicked him out. You were right. I looked at her. But I don't know if I can forgive you for this. I'm not asking you to. She went back inside. I stood there on the porch, watching the sun come up over the neighborhood I grew up in, wondering if I'd just saved my family or destroyed it completely. 4 days of silence followed. No calls. No texts. Nothing. Then, on day 5, my phone buzzed with a message from Leona. Dad kicked him out. You were right. I'd already known that. But seeing it in writing felt different. Final. I texted back. How are they? Her response came quick. Lost. Scared.
Guilty.
Take your pick. And you? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally. Relieved. Is that horrible?
No.
It's honest. Have you ever felt relief and guilt at the same time, knowing you did the right thing but hurt people you love? 3 weeks passed before Dad showed up at my office. I was in the middle of a consultation call when my assistant knocked and mouthed, "Your father's here." I wrapped up the call fast, walked to the waiting area. He was standing by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city like it held answers he couldn't find anywhere else.
"Hey," I said. He turned.
The change in him was startling. He'd lost weight, had new lines around his eyes. But something else was different too. Something in the way he held himself. Less rigid. More real. "Can we talk?" he asked. I led him to my office. Closed the door. We sat across from each other like strangers negotiating a business deal. "I've been in therapy," he said without preamble. "Your mother too. Trying to understand how we got here. How we let it get this bad." I nodded, not trusting my voice. The therapist asked me when I stopped seeing Caleb as a person and started seeing him as a problem to solve. I couldn't answer, because I don't remember. It happened so gradually that by the time I realized what we'd done, we'd already lost years to it. "What about now?" He looked down at his hands. "Now I'm trying to see all my children clearly, including you, especially you." Something in my chest loosened. Just a little. "I owe you an apology," he continued. "A real one. Not the kind where I say sorry but don't change anything. The kind where I admit I was wrong and I understand why, and I'm committed to doing better." "Okay. I was wrong to threaten you. Wrong to try to manipulate you into enabling Caleb. Wrong to choose his comfort over your respect. Wrong to make you feel like your value to this family was measured in what you could give rather than who you are." The words hit different than I expected.
Deeper.
"You saved us," he said, voice breaking slightly, "in a way money never could. You forced us to look at the truth we'd been hiding from. And I hated you for it at first.
God, I hated you. But now."
He trailed off, wiping his eyes.
"Now."
He looked up, meeting my gaze directly. "Now I'm grateful. And I'm proud. Not of what you've built or what you've earned, but of who you are. The kind of man who loves his family enough to tell them the hard truths." I felt something wet on my face. Realized I was crying. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we rebuild. Slowly. Honestly. Without lies or manipulation or conditional love." He stood, extended his hand, then seemed to think better of it and pulled me into a hug instead. We stood there for a long time, two men trying to figure out how to be father and son again after years of being strangers. When he pulled back, he hesitated. "There's something else." "What?" "Caleb's been arrested. The fraud charges. The detective you spoke to built a case. He goes to trial next month." My stomach dropped. "How's Mom taking it?" "Better than you'd think. She visited him once. Told him she loves him but won't bail him out. That this time, he's on his own." Dad managed a small, sad smile. "Your mother's stronger than I gave her credit for. What about you?" He was quiet for a moment. I wrote him a letter. Told him I failed him by never letting him fail. That the best thing I can do now is let him face this. That I'll be there when he's ready to get help, but I won't rescue him from consequences anymore. Did he respond?
Not yet.
Maybe he won't. But at least I said it. We talked for another hour.
About therapy. About Mom.
About Leona, who was struggling but healing. About the inheritance and the trust, and how none of it mattered compared to having a real relationship. When he left, he turned back at the door. "You saved us, Darian. In a way money never could." The words echoed in the empty office long after he was gone. Would you rather have your family's approval or their respect, knowing you can't always have both? Summer came and went. I got updates from Leona mostly. Caleb had been sentenced to 18 months, but they offered him a deal, 6 months if he completed a court-ordered rehabilitation program. He took it. Mom joined a support group for families of addicts. She'd call sometimes, usually late at night when Dad was asleep, and we'd talk for hours. Not about Caleb. About everything else. The things we'd never made time for before. Dad and I started meeting for breakfast once a week. No agenda. No heavy conversations. Just coffee and small talk that slowly became real talk. Leona was the hardest. She was angry at Caleb for lying, at our parents for enabling, at me for exposing it all, but mostly at herself for knowing and saying nothing. I was a coward, she told me one night over drinks. I watched it happen and did nothing because it was easier. You're not a coward. You were surviving a dysfunctional system the best way you knew how. Is that what your therapist says? I smiled. Yeah, actually. Started going in June. Turns out blowing up your family comes with some emotional baggage. She laughed. Really laughed. First time in months. October rolled around. 8 months since the dinner that changed everything. I was working late when my phone rang.
Mom.
He's out, she said.
Caleb.
He completed the program. They're releasing him tomorrow.
My hand tightened on the phone.
How do you feel about that? Terrified. Hopeful. Both. She paused. He asked to see you.
No.
Darian. I said no. I'm glad he's getting help. I hope he stays clean. But I'm not ready to see him yet. Maybe not ever. Silence. Then softly, I understand. And I respect that. The words meant more than she probably knew. 2 days later, another call. This time it was Dad. We're rewriting the will, he said. Not to punish anyone, but to make things fair. Equal shares for all 3 of you, with stipulations. Caleb's portion goes into a trust he can't access without proving sustained sobriety. Leona's is straightforward. Yours.
He paused.
Yours comes with an apology written into the legal language. An acknowledgement that we threatened to disinherit you unjustly and that we were wrong. I didn't know what to say. You don't have to worry about privileges anymore, he continued. You never should have had to earn your place in this family. That's not how love works. It's not about the money, Dad. I know. It's about respect. That's why we're doing this. Not to buy forgiveness, but to show we finally understand what we took from you. We talked for another 30 minutes about logistics and lawyers and next steps. But the real conversation was underneath all that. The unspoken acknowledgement that we were building something new from the ruins of what we'd lost. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in years.
Peace.
Not happiness, exactly.
Not yet, but peace.
The kind that comes from knowing you stood your ground and survived the earthquake that followed. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Caleb. I'm out. I'm sober.
I'm sorry. Can we talk?
I stared at the message for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Finally, I typed. Not yet. But maybe someday. Focus on staying clean. That's what matters now. His response came quick. Fair. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself. I didn't correct him. Didn't tell him I had given up, that what I did wasn't for him, but for everyone else he was hurting. Sometimes the truth isn't helpful. Sometimes mercy looks like silence. Have you ever had to choose between being honest and being kind, knowing you couldn't do both? A year after that dinner, the one that broke everything and maybe saved us, we gathered again. Same house. Different people. Mom answered the door with a real smile this time. Not the fake one she wore like armor. A real one that reached her eyes. Darian. She hugged me tight. I'm so glad you came. Wouldn't miss it. The table was set simpler this time. No expensive wine. No fancy dishes. Just food and family, and the truth sitting between us where the lies used to live. Leona arrived next, bringing her new girlfriend. Then Dad emerged from the kitchen with a tray of his famous ribs. We all stopped and stared. What? He said. I'm learning to cook. Sue me. We laughed. Real laughter that felt like medicine. Then the doorbell rang. Everyone went quiet. We all knew who it was. Mom moved to answer it, but I touched her arm. Let me. I opened the door to find Caleb standing there with a 12-month sobriety chip in his hand and fear in his eyes.
Hey, he said.
Hey. We stood there for a long moment. 2 brothers who'd once been close, then strangers, then enemies, now trying to figure out what came next. I don't expect forgiveness, he said quietly. I don't even know if I deserve to be here. But I wanted to say thank you. For not bailing me out. For letting me hit bottom. For loving me enough to let me fall. The words I'd been holding for a year finally came out. I didn't do it because I loved you. I did it because I loved myself enough to stop letting you destroy me. He flinched but nodded. Fair. That's fair. But I'm glad you're sober. I'm glad you got help. And I'm willing to see if we can rebuild something from here. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's going to take time. And honesty. And you actually staying clean. I can do that. He held up the chip. 1 year today. I know that's not enough to make up for everything, but it's a start. I stepped aside, letting him in. Then let's start there. Dinner was awkward at first. Too polite. Too careful. But slowly, as the evening went on, something shifted. Someone made a joke. Someone else laughed. The conversation found a rhythm. At one point, Caleb looked across the table at me. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not just for the money stuff, but for everything. For using you. For manipulating you. For treating you like an ATM instead of a brother. The table went quiet. I was jealous, he continued, of your success. Your stability. The way you had your life together, while mine kept falling apart. And instead of dealing with that, I tried to drag you down with me. That was wrong. And I'm sorry. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't seen in years. Genuine remorse. Actual change. I forgive you, I said. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means I'm willing to move forward, but you have to keep earning that trust. I will. Every day. Mom was crying again, but happy tears this time. Dad had his hand over his mouth, trying to compose himself. Leona just smiled and raised her glass. To new beginnings, she said. We all drank to that. After dinner, Caleb and I ended up on the back porch, watching the sun set over the yard where we used to play as kids. You know what I learned in rehab, he said. What? That love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's enabling. And the people who really love you are the ones willing to let you face consequences. He looked at me. You really loved me, even when I hated you for it. Still do, I said. Even when you make it hard. He laughed. I'll try to make it easier. Don't try. Just do. We sat in comfortable silence, two brothers finding their way back to each other one conversation at a time. Have you ever had to rebuild a relationship from scratch, knowing it would never be what it was, but hoping it could be something better? I drove home that night with the windows down and music playing, feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone sat in the cup holder, silent for once. No crisis. No demands. No manipulation. Just peace. The city lights blurred past as I thought about everything that happened. The dinner that broke us. The confrontation that shattered us. The slow, painful process of rebuilding what we'd lost. We weren't fixed. Probably never would be completely.
But we were honest now.
And that counted for something. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Thank you for coming tonight. It meant everything to your mother. To all of us. I smiled and texted back. Thanks for the ribs. Keep practicing. His response. Will do. And Darian? We're proud of you. Not for your success or your money. For who you are. The man who stood his ground when it mattered most. I had to pull over because I couldn't see through the tears. Another text came through. This one from Mom. I never told you this, but when you were little, your grandfather said you had the strongest spine in the family. I didn't understand what he meant until now. Thank you for being strong when the rest of us were weak. Then Leona. Tonight was good. Really good. Love you, big brother. And finally, Caleb. One day at a time. Thanks for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself. I won't let you down again. I sat in my car in a random parking lot, reading those messages over and over, realizing something important. I'd spent a year thinking I destroyed my family by refusing to enable Caleb. But I hadn't destroyed anything. I just cleared away the lies, so we could build something real. Family isn't about who needs you most. It's about who respects your boundaries while loving you anyway. Sometimes refusing to rescue someone is the only way to save them. And sometimes the quietest no is the loudest act of love you'll ever make. I started the engine and headed home, the city's skyline glowing ahead of me like a promise. My phone buzzed one more time, another message from Dad. "We're proud of you." 3 simple words that meant everything. I pulled up to my apartment, parked, and sat for a moment in the silence. Thought about that dinner a year ago, the threats, the blackmail, the choice that changed everything. I'd lost sleep over that decision, lost peace, lost certainty, but I'd gained something bigger, self-respect. The knowledge that I could stand up for myself even when it cost me everything. And in the end, it hadn't cost me everything. It had just cost me the version of family built on lies and manipulation and conditional love. What I had now was smaller, messier, more uncertain, but it was real. And real was worth fighting for. I walked into my apartment, poured a glass of water, and looked out at the city. Tomorrow, I'd wake up and go to work and live my life. Next week, I'd have breakfast with Dad. Next month, there'd be another family dinner. And someday, maybe years from now, Caleb would still be sober and we'd actually be brothers again. Or maybe not. Maybe some things stay broken. But I'd learned something important through all of this. You can love someone without destroying yourself to save them. You can set boundaries without being cruel. You can walk away without giving up. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the consequences of their choices. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. My phone buzzed one last time. A calendar reminder. Dad breakfast, 8 a.m. I smiled and set my alarm.
Tomorrow was a new day.
And for the first time in years, I wasn't dreading what it might bring. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the loudest love is the one that says no. If you've ever had to choose between keeping peace and standing your ground, drop a comment below. Your story might help someone else find the courage to set boundaries with the people they love. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. We share real stories about real struggles every week. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to say no, even to family. Sometimes saving yourself is the only way to save everyone else. See you in the next one.